Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Football Diehards Sunday show. I am Armando Marsal. With me, as always, is Bobby Gomes. How's it going, my brother?
Going good. How's Florida treating you?
Florida's good. We had some nice weather the last couple of days. It's now a little warmer than it was, towards the end of the week. We had some 60s and 70s, back to the 80s now. But I know it's freezing up there where you're at, man, in Boston. And digging the new haircut, man. I
Yeah,
like it. I like it. We did not get to see that on Thursday.
I wanted to reveal it on
No. It's listen. We review everything on this show, man, and that's so you definitely got to come out with that haircut. You were hiding it on Thursday from the viewers with the Eskimo hat. I was digging that as well, man. But glad to be here, man. It's Sunday. We already got some news that is going to make a lot of difference this weekend, and that's Lamar Jackson will start under center for Baltimore. You and I spoke briefly before the show, and you kind of alluded to that's the cash game play this week. You want to kind of talk a little bit about him before we jump into this slate?
Yeah, I think it's between him and probably Cam you're looking at. Well, I think there's a couple different options, but I think just because they said that he's probably going to be the guy who's going to see the majority of snaps at the quarterback position at that price, I feel like with his legs, he has a high floor, and I think you just have to plug him in.
Yeah, and that's kind of going to be the something that a lot of people are going to have to decide. Putting him in your lineup does free up a ton of salary and does allow you to get up to some of the high-priced players in good spots. There are multiple, elite players in very good spots that, are pretty pricey. So kind of have to take that into consideration. Aside from that, I don't think there is any major news right now. It is worth noting that RG3 is expected to see some snaps. So this is kind of a tricky situation. That said, I still think Lamar Jackson will be fine. AJ Green is going to test his toe during the injury. During warmups today, it's not certain whether he's going to play or not. I would probably assume that he does not give it a go, and if he does, he'll be limited. So, not someone I would be looking to roster anyways this week, especially in this tough matchup. Before we jump into it, let's answer some of these questions here. We got PPR need one, Jalen Richard, Taylor Gabriel, or Buck Allen here. I would probably go Richard. I think it's just a pretty safe floor in the game environment should favor him as they're going to be chasing points there.
Yeah, I like Richard too. In terms of the defense, I'm kind of leaning towards the Jags. Ben's home road splits and Sundays at 1 p.m. He's kind of struggled, so I think the Jags are probably a good play.
Yeah, I'm okay with either defenses. I lean a little bit more with Carolina. I do understand Jags are at home. It's a better situation, I guess. But Carolina just, gets a pretty, thin Detroit Lions offense. So I think they're in a good spot. And we got another one, Tariq Cohen or Lindsay here. Give me Lindsay.
Yeah, I like Lindsay too. And I was wondering if you had anything on that because I haven't heard his name popping, but I feel like he hit that 5K kind of line where people don't want to pay up for want to go over 5K. They'd rather go to Dion Lewis or guys lower than that. And I think he's at 5'2". I don't mind paying. He's in a pretty good spot. I don't mind Lindsay. I actually like him a good bit.
We briefly talked about him on Thursday. I kind of like him too. He's intriguing to me. The thing with me this week is just roster construction is not allowing me to fit him in. I think that's the problem. And unless I go out of what I'm trying to do, it doesn't, make sense because I'm using a lot of those, 5,500 to 6K receivers or 5,300 to 6K receivers in the flex, and that's kind of what I'm doing this week. And maybe that's something that towards the end of the show might change if we both find something here that we like on him. But yeah, I think he's just matchup proof really, and he's still reasonably priced at 5,200. I just don't know what kind of seating he really has in this matchup. That's my concern. Anthony Miller or Reynolds, non-PPR. Your point, I guess you're looking for touchdowns here, so I kind of would rather go Miller I think Reynolds will be a safer play in PPR, but in non-PPR, it's kind of tough taking the third or fourth option, in the pecking order here for the Rams. So I'm going to go Miller.
Yeah, I'd go Miller too. And on the second question, Wentz over Goff this week, I'm kind of leaning Goff. Obviously, they're both in two very good matchups. I just think Goff at home is probably the better play.
Yeah, I'm going to take the home quarterback here as well, Goff. They're very close for me. I don't think you could go wrong with either of the two. I think they're both going to put up solid numbers here. So, it's good to be in this situation. But yeah, I go Goff here when you have these two as your options. I love them both this week, though. So yeah, I mean, I'm ready to jump into this day, man. We got, I believe it's 10 games on the board. And let's jump right into it. I mean, let's not waste any time here. Cincy at Baltimore. We already talked about Lamar Jackson will start under center here. What it does for me, to be honest, he's 4,700. You make a ton of sense. I think he is should be a staple of your cash game lineups. I'm still torn on what I want to do with him in tournaments. I think he's okay in single entry stuff. Larger field tournaments, I probably would stay away. I still think there is a pretty, I think he's going to be very volatile. We haven't seen enough out of him in the past game. I know he could run a ton here, which does give him a pretty, solid floor. And I guess at that price point, that's all you're really looking for. But I'm still torn, honestly, in tournaments on what I want to do with him. This does, however, change anything for me. I mean, everything for me with the receiving core for the Ravens. They're in good spots, but I just don't know who I can trust here. John Brown at 5,900. It's a little pricey now considering Jackson's under center. Could say the same, about Crabtree, Snead. These are just guys that I had interest in earlier in the week, but this really changes it all for me. So I'm kind of going to stay away from that receiving situation. If I do play Jackson, it'll be by himself because of what he can do with his legs. Do you have any takes on that here with this offense?
No, yeah, I think Jackson's like the number one quarterback in cash, like we talked about. It's going to be difficult if Robert Griffin does see snaps, which I think he will. They've been talking about using two quarterbacks all season. Wouldn't surprise me if one of them scored a touchdown, not basically just running. I know this sounds crazy, but in an uncharacteristic way for a quarterback. They run like a little trickery with the two of them maybe in the backfield if you see something like that. So, yeah, it's within cash just because like RG3 probably going to steal some snaps. It's kind of a questionable play, but I still think Lamar Jackson's the guy in cash games. With the receivers, yeah, I think if RG3 is throwing passes in tournaments, like I think RG3 is like interesting. And well, I think he was more interesting before they said that Lamar Jackson would see the majority of snaps. But I would have liked John Brown more if that was the case. I think their tight ends are pretty cheap if you're looking for punts. Mark Andrews, Hayden Hurst to pair up with Jackson. Rookie quarterbacks like to kind of hit the tight end. So, but the thing about this game for me, it's a second divisional game. Traditionally, those games are pretty low scoring. So, yeah, I'm outside of Jackson and cash because of his legs and that floor. I'm not really considering this game too much.
Yeah, and this is just, I think I agree with you there where if RG3 would have been named a starter, I would have felt a little bit better about starting him than I do Jackson, to be honest with you. I just think this is a very big game for Jackson. A lot of implications here. Kind of, I don't know how he's going to handle the pressure in this. Because he is talented. Garrett, I understand that, but I think it's a little bit more than talent here because this does have a lot of implications, I think. So, I just don't know how he's going to handle that kind of pressure.
We didn't touch on Collins either. I think Collins is one of the guys that a lot of people are going to in cash games and on DK. I just don't think it's the greatest play. Definitely in tournaments, but not in cash just because of how the scoring system PPR, like, it's probably a better play on FanDuel. I'm not playing on FanDuel this week, so I don't know the exact price, but just more on touchdown dependent sites. I think he could have a good game. I just don't think he's kind of limited in the passing game.
And I really think, if the Bengals are smart here, I really think they just stack 8 in the box and force Jackson to throw the ball and let him or make him try to beat them that way. I mean, that's what I would do if I'm planning this game, especially what I saw in the preseason. He just didn't look that sharp passing. I would just stack 8 in the box and force him to pass. Like, that's really what I would do here. Anything on the Bengals side? I know you had mentioned, you had some interest here, not a ton, but a little bit on Boyd here, on Tyler Boyd.
Totally off that. Like, I don't hate it, but like, I'm just not going there. I wish he was cheap.
And guys, I forgot to say, I'm sorry, I forgot to say the Vegas in numbers here. This game has a 44.5 over under. It's actually jumped up a point from when it opened. Ravens have a 25.5 implied team total, and the Bengals have a 19.5 implied team total. That's updated on Fantasy Labs now. So just kind of wanted to throw that out there, and didn't mean to cut you off there, Bobby. I'm sorry about that.
No, that's cool.
So I know no Boyd for you. I'm with you. No Boyd for me either. I know the volume's going to be there. I just don't like this matchup. Obviously, if we see a big game out of him, I wouldn't be surprised. But I'm not expecting a big game out of him. Any final thoughts here in this game? Are the any of these defenses in play for you? I mean, Ravens are pretty expensive. I think they're in a good spot, but I just don't, considering how tight salary is this week and how much I want to pay up for other players, I don't see myself paying up for any defenses this week.
No, I'm not really. In terms of the defenses, I'm kind of staying away.
All right. I'm ready to move on to this next game, and that is Carolina heading to Detroit to take on the Lions. This game has a 49 over-under. It's actually gone down 2.5 points since it opened. 51% of the bets are on the under here. The Panthers do have a 26.5 implied team total. The Lions have a 22.5 implied team total. This is a game where I think you can get good fantasy value from. I just don't know if there's tournament winning upside here aside from Cam Newton and McCaffrey. That's pretty much the only thing I have from Panther side. Now in Detroit, again, I think Golladay is in a good spot. I really, really like him. We talked about him, Thursday night. That hasn't changed for me. I think he's very reasonably priced here. I also have interest in Theo Reddick as a floor play at just 4K. And sites like, you had just mentioned Collins. I feel a little bit more comfortable with Theo Reddick because of his pass catching abilities and his involvement in the passing game, especially since Golden Tate left Detroit. I believe he's lined up in the slot about 40% of the time or somewhere in that ballpark. So he's going to see plenty of targets, I think, once again this week, especially considering that they're going to be playing from behind. So that's where I have from this game, but it's not a game I'm making anyone a priority, aside from maybe Cam Newton.
Yeah, I think just within the Detroit offense, I think I'm kind of higher on the Detroit side. Golladay, Theo Riddick, I'm kind of off Tyus Jones, but I understand why people are playing him. Theo Riddick, like you said, is the guy that's been used in the slot. I'd like Kerryon Johnson as well. I probably prefer Riddick. It's interesting. I think Dion Lewis and Riddick is going to be very heavily owned in cash once again this week. But I think that Riddick's a nice tournament pivot, and I think Riddick can also be used in cash. A lot of that market share is going to go I think it's like a 45% market share that's going to have to be divvied up, distributed between the guys in this offense. I think Riddick's definitely going to see that at 4K. So he's a great play. I think Riddick's really solid in tournaments. I really like Riddick a lot. I think he'd be someone you'd want to be overweight on. Golladay, I'm not as high on Golladay as other people, but I'll probably play him in cash, at least on one of the slates, whether it's the early slate or the main slate. I haven't decided yet. Galladay's definitely viable for cash. And I like the Lions D as well. I think they're pretty interesting. The only play on the Panther side that I kind of like, but I'm probably not going to get there, is Christian McCaffrey. I understand why everyone likes Newton. Newton's just so volatile in terms of like his mindset, like how his thought process is. I think when they're struggling, he struggles. Obviously, this is a situation where they should smash, but I just not really a big fan. I know why people want to go to Newton, but I just don't like to go there often in cash games. Too volatile.
Yeah, and then for those who don't know, I mean, Marvin Jones has already been ruled out, so he won't play today. So this is kind of why both Bobby and I, have interest in Golladay, because it's just I think the targets are going to be there. And that's why I like Theoretic a ton too, because I do think he's going to get some of that market share that was Jones. I don't think it's all going to go to Golladay. I've heard a lot of people say, oh, all that is going to Golladay. I do think the majority of it will go to Golladay, but I do think Riddick does benefit from that as well. And I'm with you. I'm not on Tyus Jones at all. I just don't think you need to go there this week. But yeah, I'm pretty much on the same page in this game. I agree with you. I don't think I can get to McCaffrey this week. I'm finding ways to move up and get Elliott or Barkley in my lineup, or Kamara. Like those are the kind of the three guys I'm prioritizing this week. Very difficult to basically play McCaffrey as well this week. So that's kind of where we're at here in this game. Anything else, Bobby, before we move on to this next one?
No, I think we did a good job on that one. Hopefully.
Tennessee and Indy, man. This is a game that I'm growing more and more interest in. I know you talked a little bit about it on Thursday, but man, there's been some like positive line movement here in a good, 50.5 over under now. Opened at 48, 2.5 point increase. 70% of the bets are on the over here. Both teams over a 24 implied team total. Colts have 26.25. Titans have 24.25. I'm going to give you the floor because I know you like this game quite a bit as well. So let's just go ahead and tell me where you're at here.
Yeah, I really like Mariota. I like his running ability. I also think that they're in a really good spot. One of my buddies was breaking down how it's just how they've been attacking basically defenses like the Colts, and Tennessee's been doing a pretty good job. Yeah, Corey Davis, just the market share is so high. Like I feel like he's a lock in cash. Dion Lewis is someone I'm probably going to have in the majority of my cash game lineups. Yeah, and on the other side, like Andrew Luck in tournaments, if he's going to throw the ball 50 times, I think T.Y. Hilton is going to go very overlooked in a spot that he should smash versus Malcolm Butler. So those are the guys that I'm really targeting.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more with you on Corey Davis there. I mean, it's just a really good spot here. The volume, like you mentioned, 10 targets in each of his last two games. And I just think you're going to continue seeing that. I think Mariota is a pretty sharp call there. I don't think he's going to garner any ownership this week. I think he makes a ton of sense in tournaments because he does have that upside, without a doubt. Dion Lewis, to me, is a core play. I'm prioritizing him. I know he's going to be popular, but I'm okay with that. I mean, the volume has been there. The efficiency wasn't there last week, but he's averaging over 20 touches per game throughout the last three games. So really think this is a good spot for him. And he still remains very, very cheap at 4,800 on DraftKings. So like him quite a bit. Luck's matchup is not the greatest, man. But let me tell you, I really like him. He's been very, very sharp and very good. Throwing, I think it's 3 or more touchdown passes in, I think, 6 consecutive games. I'll pull it up now, but it's somewhere in that ballpark range. And he's just going to toss it a ton, man. I'm looking at it now. So it's since week 4, he's thrown for 3 or more touchdowns in each game. I just think that, he is getting it done. He's finding ways at tight ends. He's just spreading the ball around there quite a bit. I agree with you. Hilton does have huge upside here. We really haven't seen it too many times this season, but I think at that price range, he's more of a 7K, receiver, and he's 6,100. So I think he's very affordable here. And I wouldn't be surprised to see him, break one for a big touchdown and just, rack up the points in a hurry here. I like both offenses quite a bit. No defense for me here. Marlon Mack, I cannot play him this week. I like him as a running back. I like this, this offensive line, but that 6K price range is just too steep for me. We saw him really struggle last week. I respect the Titans run defense here. So I do think that he is susceptible when he has tougher matchups to kind of fail. I'm not saying that, I'm expecting him to fail today, but he can fail. He's not a lock, like some of the guys that we've talked about, like Phillip Lindsay. I think he's matchup proof. I don't see Mac as being that. So can't go there this week. I'm not going to be chasing the Derrick Henry points. I know he had a big game last week, and now he has scored in 3 consecutive games. But his usage is very, very limited. He was only on the field 25% of the offensive snaps last week. So you're going to be touchdown chasing here for Derrick Henry. Do you agree with that on Henry, or you feel like he's an okay play here?
No, I don't agree with that on Henry. I mean, I do agree with that on Henry. I don't agree that he's an okay play. I think last week was kind of just a situation where they were ahead and the game type fit Henry's style. This week, I feel like they'll probably be playing from behind. They could be playing from a lead at like different points, but I think this game's going to be closer. And I just think that it fits Dion Lewis's style much better. And also the Colts have really struggled in terms of giving up targets to pass catching running backs, and it fits Dion Lewis.
Yeah, I agree 100% there. We cannot move on from this game without talking about the Colts tight ends, man, because I know that there's been questions about that this week. And look, guys, Eric Ebron has been phenomenal all season long. He's just scoring touchdowns pretty much every week, but he doesn't see the field as much as Jack Doyle. So I am always going to lean Jack Doyle just because the opportunity will be there. Would I be surprised to see Ebron scored a touchdown this weekend? No, I wouldn't, because he's basically scored at least 1 touchdown in all but 2 games with or without Jack Doyle. If Jack Doyle is not there, he's an auto play for me, but Jack Doyle is playing. So I'm kind of staying away from this situation this week just because I don't want to guess. But if I have to pick between one of the two, it would always be Doyle. And I do like Ebron quite a bit, but it would be Doyle because he's on the field much more.
No, I'm of the exact same mindset. The problem is, I think eventually you have to get off your own recency bias. I never liked Eric Ebron, but the situation's different for him now. He's obviously found a home in Indianapolis. So I think we have to start, even though the snap percentage and the target, it hasn't matched up, I still think eventually in tournaments, we have to get him in the player pool. It's if the matchup's right.
Yeah, and that makes a ton of sense, man. It really does. I'm going to stay away from the situation this week, but I think, if you're in season-long leagues, at least they're both viable options this week. Anything else in this game? I think we covered this one pretty good as well.
We got it.
All right, on to the next game, and that is Dallas at Atlanta taking on the Falcons. This game has a 49 over-under. It's moved up a point since it opened. 78% of the bets continue to be on the over here. Falcons have a 26.25 implied team total. Cowboys have a 22.75 implied team total. Talk to me about this game, Bobby.
Yeah, I was very high on Zeke and cash earlier in the week. I still think you want to get him in there in cash or tournaments. I don't know if I'm going to go that route anymore. Maybe just on the early slate. I like Zeke a ton. If you can fit him, make him work. Smash spot. If you look at the numbers in terms of what they've given up, what Atlanta's given up to opposing running backs in terms of fantasy production, I think one time all season, running back's been under 10 points or under 20 points for that matter. So Zeke with his usage, I just think you have to consider him in all formats. Amari Cooper's another one. He's got a pretty good price tag now. We look when he was in Oakland, he was always kind of hovering around 6,500, 7K. And right now you're getting him at 5,400 and he's seeing a good market share in terms of targets. They're playing in the Dome. Dak seems comfortable with him. He passes the eye test. I don't think you should be afraid of rostering Amari Cooper in all formats. I don't know if I'm going to go there in cash on the main slate, but possibility on other slates. I think at that price tag, I just wouldn't overlook him because of past recency bias.
Yeah, I agree with that, man. I think Zeke is in a smash spot. Like you mentioned, the Falcons have just been generous to running backs all season long. I think Adam Levitan did tweet something out about that they've allowed, like you mentioned, over 20 DraftKings points in all but one game to running backs. The usage has been there. His involvement in the passing game is there. So I think it's a great spot. But much like you, I was a little bit more bullish on him than I am now. I just, the guy that I'm just pretty much smashing the lock button in is Saquon Barkley, and they're pretty much priced the same. So I just, to me, it's tough I've tried very hard, but then I'd be giving up on Michael Thomas to fit them both in my lineup. And I just don't want to give up on Thomas either, because that over-under just continues to go up. So I'm definitely, you have to choose, and I'm not making enough lineups to fit everyone in. But I think Elliott is a strong play. I think he is, if he should be a priority play for everyone this weekend. I just think it's a great spot. I really like Dak this weekend as well, and that's another reason why I'm going more with the Dak Cooper combination here than I am with the Zeke. And I just, I love Breeze, I love Wentz, but I'm saving a ton of money by going down to Dak at 5,200. I just think it's a really good spot. Atlanta has been vulnerable against the pass as well. They've been also vulnerable against, quarterbacks that run, being pretty generous to that department here. And Dak has just done a pretty decent job. Like I mentioned on Thursday, man, the completion percentage is at 67% and 72% over the last 2 weeks, whereas his highest throughout, before Cooper was a 65%. He was averaging about 63% completion percentage. He's also attempted at least 30 passes in 3 consecutive games. Prior to those last 3 games, he had attempted over 30 passes just once. So we're seeing some trends in the right direction here for Dak Prescott. I think there's a nice floor along with a ceiling here, and I think the game environment really suits him really well. I love pairing him up with Cooper. I think Cooper's still cheap, considering his upside and his role in this offense. At least 8 targets since joining the Cowboys. So I like him quite a bit, and this duo just makes a ton of sense here for me. So I like them both quite a bit. I think the three, the 3-headed monster here in Dallas is all firmly in play. From the Falcons side, Matt Ryan, I don't think this is the best of matchups for him. But he has just been stellar at home this year, averaging 32 DraftKings points per game, 360 yards per game. And this is in 5 games, and 14 touchdowns at home compared to 7 on the road. So much better at home this season thus far. So I wouldn't be surprised to see him just pop off here and have a big game. It's definitely not out of the realm of possibilities. Julio Jones has a very, very difficult one-on-one matchup. We talked about this on Thursday against Byron Jones. He's still going to be a high-volume guy, high-ceiling guy, but I'm tempering my expectations, to be honest with you. And I know he's going to be popular, and I'm kind of going to fade him because of that. The one player I do like, though, on this offense a ton is Austin Hooper. To me, he's just in a really, really good spot here. We saw him, with 11 targets last week. And if Julio Jones is struggling against Byron Jones, we could see, Ryan check down to Hooper quite a bit this week. So I do like him at 4,500, and I think he's a very, very strong play. Any thoughts for you on the Atlanta side?
Yeah, I love Hooper. I'm not really going to go to Jones. We know about the Dallas secondary, how tough they've kind of been all year. This could very well be the spot. Julio goes off just because it'll probably be low owned, but I'm just not going to go there with Sarkisian calling the plays. Tevin Coleman's at a good price tag. It's just with so much value up top, I don't know if I really want to go there. That's pretty much – obviously, I think Ryan, like you said, I think you did a really good job of breaking down Ryan. But he's another one where I'm just going to stay away.
Yeah, I just think if you're thinking about Ryan, you look for $200 more or even $400, and you go with either Wentz or Breeze. I mean, that's just the way I view it. Or you pay less and take Cam Newton. There's just so many other options at better price, or not better price, but in that same price range that you don't need to go there. And I agree with you on the running back situation for Atlanta. It's just a no-go for me. There's no need to go there this week, I think. Any final thoughts here before we move on to this next game?
No, I think we got it.
Tampa Bay heading to New York to take on the Giants. This is another game with a pretty interesting over-under here. It's 53.5. It's jumped up 1.5 since it opened. It is worth noting that the Giants' implied team total has gone up nearly 2 points since it opened at 28.25. Now 25.25 implied team total for the Bucks. I alluded to, just now that Barkley is someone I'm prioritizing, and I'm pretty much hitting the lock button on him, man. The usage is through the roof. There's some key defenders. I believe one of the linebackers for Tampa Bay, I forget his name, David, his last name I think it is. He won't be playing today, which is a big loss.
Levante David? He's not playing?
Yes. Yeah, correct. I think that's a big loss, for the, to stop the middle of the field here. And I think Barkley's just going to have he's going to get everything he wants in this game, and they're Bucks are one of the worst red zone defenses as well. When you look at his usage in the red zone for Barkley, it's just it's absurd. So I'm gonna go ahead and click the lock button. I know he's going to be uber chalk, but I'm okay with that, man. To me, he's very good chalk. I think he's in a phenomenal spot. I think the entire Giants offense is in a great spot. Tampa Bay is just terrible in all aspects of the defense. I think Eli is firmly in play. I think Odell Beckham is a smash spot here. I actually like Sterling Shepard. I think he's going to go under owned. He's only 5,300, and to me, this is a really good way to get ownership in this game. For someone who is averaging nearly 7 targets per game, he's involved. It's not like he's not, and he can do a lot with those targets here, I think. So to me, Sterling Shepard is a sneaky play. I'm okay with playing both Barkley and Shepard in the same lineup. I'm not hesitant to do that because they have a healthy implied team total here, and I do think that they can score at will against this Bucks defense. And even Evan Ingram, he's not a priority play for me, but he's in a good spot too. I wish we would see more consistent volume for him. I know that the targets have been trending in a better direction as of late, but I'm prioritizing Sterling Shepard and Barkley out of this offense, and I think playing both of them in one lineup is fine. Your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think Shep's an extremely sharp play, and I'd be overweight on him in tournaments. Barkley in cash games, you definitely want to have push the lock button in pretty much majority of tournaments outside of maybe if you're building 150 lineups in the Millionaire Maker or the Slant, you can be with the field or below the field and try to fade him that way just because there's so much running back value. But in the higher dollar tournaments, I'd probably be on him just because so many people are going to play him. It's kind of a tough fade in those scenarios. So I don't know. I like Odell. I think he's a great tournament play. You can use him in cash, obviously. I really like the Bucs side of this game. I like Fitzpatrick a ton. I think Munkin's back calling the plays in terms of the offensive play calling. So I think Deshaun Jackson, who's going to be very low owned, is in a great spot. Godwin as well, and OJ Howard for that matter. The total's going up in this game. I think it's something you definitely have to take into consideration. I like both sides of the game, like Eli. I think I'd rather play Fitz, but I don't hate Eli at all. Evan Ingram, everything in this game's good in tournaments for sure. I think the staples in cash are Saquon. Saquon, but I think you can use Shep in cash.
Yeah, I agree. I agree with that. I think he's playable in both cash game and tournaments. I just think he's such a strong play this week. And he's 5,300, Shepard. So it's a fair price, especially when you're looking. This is a week where you're kind of digging around for, trying to get the best. You do this every week to getting the best point per dollar. But this is specifically a week because there's so much good, talent to pay up for. So I agree with your analysis on Tampa Bay. I like Fitzpatrick as well. At the end of the day, he threw 41 times this week and over 400 yards. He just didn't throw a touchdown. And he's going completely overlooked this week. And I think
Fitzpatrick.
I think he's such a strong tournament.
Yeah,
I really do.
I think Fitzpatrick's going to be on the Millie Maker. I just have I don't know. We hit it the last 2 weeks. So in terms of the stack, right? So would we have the Bears last week?
I think was it last week? Yeah, it was last weekend.
I don't know. 3 weeks in a row would be asking a lot, I like Fitz this.
I like Fitz a lot. I think he's a very strong tournament play as well.
Yeah.
I agree. And I think Deshaun Jackson would be the guy you pair him up with here. I think that's where you want to kind of exploit this defense. I'm okay with Howard as well. But to me, I just have this, like you, I have this kind of feeling where it's going to be Fitzpatrick to Deshaun Jackson in this one. For some reason, I don't like Evans here. Got a couple of, or someone's asking, interest in Humphreys. Look, Humphreys to me is one of those guys that can win you a tournament. But the problem is just you're really throwing the dart with him because you don't know what you're going to get. It's too unpredictable. This is certainly a game environment where he could benefit from. But we just talked about 3 or 4 different pass catchers here that weren't named Humphreys that can also have a role in this offense. So very difficult to pinpoint, his production on a week-to-week basis. So while the game environment, the price is certainly interesting, it's just a matter of unable to predict the market share for him today. So kind of, I don't like to go in guessing with that kind of player, but definitely has upside. We've seen it before. Any different thoughts or takes on Humphreys, Bobby?
No, that's pretty much my same take.
All right, guys, a couple of inactives and actives, all right? So we got AJ Green will not play as expected. John Ross is active. Tajay Sharp active. James Conner is active. Flacco is inactive. Lamar Jackson is starting. Ty Montgomery is active. That's a little interesting to me, man, because I wouldn't be surprised to see him have a pretty decent game catching passes out of his backfield. That's throwing a dart that's taking too much of a high risk. But I wouldn't be surprised to see him be productive. Tiki Kute is active. Dustin Hopkins is active, and Chris Godwin is active, guys. Emil, thank you for that information. We appreciate that. So there you go, guys. Before we move on to the next game, Bobby, we got a couple questions. I answered some, but if you want to go ahead and give them a go, Henry or Mixon, I went with Mixon.
Henry, yeah, I'd go Mixon.
Yeah. And then Corey Davis, Amari Cooper, Doug Martin, Emmanuel Sanders, Jordan Howard. Need 3 in a standard league. I went with the 3 receivers.
Yeah, I'm going to take the 3 pass catchers as well.
Okay. Should I take a chance at Watkins playing or pick up Traquan Smith or Seth Roberts off of free agent? What I would do is I would definitely take a chance on him playing and see if there's like maybe a receiver or someone else from that game, like maybe Reynolds if he's still available in your league, or maybe one of the of the Chiefs receivers. I believe Conley would be an option, right? I know you. That's you're the Conley whisperer. So I'm just saying I would because I think that's such a good game environment that I would want as much exposure to that game as possible. So I would definitely take a shot with Watkins. If he gives it a go, great. If he doesn't, you have someone else from that game, which is going to produce a ton of points. So that's kind of the way I would approach, especially with Traquan Smith or Seth Roberts as your options. I just don't, I love Traquan Smith. I've been talking about him pretty much all season long. He just hasn't put it together. So kind of tough to trust him or even Seth Roberts. I mean, that Oakland Raiders offense is as an implied team total, I think, of 18 points, which is, super, super low. That would be what I would do. Any different thoughts there?
No, I would do the same thing. I like Traquan Smith, but Watkins is in a very similar game. Watkins is in a very similar game environment, and he's on the road, and Watkins has actually been pretty solid on the road all year. I think I'd wait on the Watkins.
Yeah. Fitz needs 8 receptions to pass Jerry Rice for the most receptions with one team lock him in. I'm not playing Fitzgerald in DFS, but I think he's a fine season-long play. The volume has been there. The matchup is good. 10 targets, if I'm not mistaken, over the last 2 games. So, or each of the last 2 games. So, definitely someone that's seeing value there. I'm not a big narrative guy, but considering the matchup and considering his volume, I definitely think he has a good floor, safe floor, and if he gets in the end zone, is a bonus. Connor being active, I'm assuming you're taking the same take there. Right? Unless
a lot of narrative.
Yeah. Connor being
a lot of narratives in the Arizona game. Christian Kirk birthday narrative. Fitz That
Yeah,
Jerry
there's
Rice
tons.
record narrative. Just stack it up, I guess, right? If you're a narrative guy. I would
Exactly.
don't stack it. I actually like Rosen. I like Kirk.
I know. I love. I love that offense.
Yeah.
Actually, I really love that offense. I wouldn't be surprised to see them being a. I wouldn't see that. You see, I wouldn't be that being a game when you stack this weekend. Saw Connor in Pittsburgh is active. Is Samuels totally dropped? Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't be rostering Samuels this week or even if he we're going to get some starts. Yeah, we set C2000. We already answered that. Jalen Richard and Carolina for me. Jalen Richard and Jaguars for Bobby. All right, that's it for the questions for now. Believe on to the next game. We covered anything else on the Tampa Bay Giants game? I think we covered that one well. Houston heading to Washington to take on the Redskins. We finally are going to a game that does not have as high of an over-under. In fact, this game has a pretty low over-under here at 41.5 points. It's actually gone down 1.5 points since it opened. 52% of the bets are on the under here. Texans have an implied team total of 22.25. Redskins have an implied team total of 19.25. Give me your thoughts on this game, Bobby.
Not much. The defenses.
Yeah, I don't mind DeAndre Hopkins as a tournament play just because the volume is consistent. The upside's, been there. He's done well, even though he's had some tough matchups as of late. So this is going to be a little bit, one of the better matchups he's had in a couple of weeks now. Not the best. I mean, it's not an elite matchup. He still has Josh Norman, but still, Hopkins has the highest advantage rating on the slate here at 40%, according to Pro Football Focus. So, and I think he's just going to virtually go on own here with so much upside. Like when you're talking about slate breaking upside, he certainly has that. When you look at 12 targets last week, got 29.5 fantasy points at Denver in a very tough matchup against Harris. Then in week 8, 26.2 DraftKings points, 2 touchdowns against Miami against Xavier Howard. Got in the end zone against Jacksonville. Week 7 against Buffalo. He's faced some pretty tough defenses in the last 4 games. Still has found success. So got to take him into consideration. I think he's a fine tournament play if you're trying to pivot off of guys like Odell Beckham, Michael Thomas. I'm not suggesting you do this, but if you're trying to find some, a different way to go at receiver, you might want to check out Hopkins because I just think he's in a really good spot, and he's the type of receiver that can definitely have, 30 DraftKings points easily and win you a tournament. So aside from him, though, I don't have much in this game. I like the Texans defense quite a bit on the road here. I think they have a pretty good pass rush, and they should be able to get, to the quarterback here for the Redskins, Alex Smith, because they are dealing with a ton of injuries in this offensive line. But other than that, I'm pretty good to move on to the next. Anything else here for you? Any thoughts on Hopkins?
No thoughts on Hopkins. Did you say Tymont was starting, or is it his debut?
Active. He's not starting. If he was starting, we
okay. No, I just wanted to make sure.
No. Active. Yeah. So, so anything else on this game, man? I'm ready to go on to the next. If you are,
move on.
Pittsburgh at Jacksonville. This game, there's a couple plays here, man, that are interesting to me. But this game has a 47 over/under here. Pittsburgh is 25.75 implied team total, 4.5 favorites on the road. The Jaguars have a 21.25 implied team total. I am digging James Conner this week, man. I don't know why. I know the matchup is not great. I just think he's a really strong play. The volume has been there for him. The usage is there. The red zone, in the passing game, it's just, he left early last week because he got concussed, but he was on pace to have a good game as well against the Panthers. They weren't going to need his services anyways because that game, it turned into a blowout against Carolina. But he's just been getting it done. He got it done against a really tough Ravens defense a couple weeks ago. I think that he's going to go completely overlooked and has immense upside and a high ceiling here. And at 7,200, I kind of like that. I think Antonio Brown is underpriced. I'm not going to go there this weekend, to be honest with you. I think he's fine, but I'm not going there. I had a little bit more interest in him earlier in the week than I do now. I'd much rather play Hopkins if I'm sticking to that price range at low ownership as well. Give me your thoughts on this Steelers offense. I know on the road they're not the same. They play far worse on the road, which is why I'm not, really attacking this passing game. But I still think Connor could have a pretty big game here without the Steelers offense, or passing game having a big game. Any thoughts there?
Yeah. So I honestly think that Connor is the play. I'm not really in love with the pass catchers. Like Jags defense, I know the Lions kind of moved against the Jags, but a home dog in this situation, I like the Jags defense at 2,200 just for the price. I wouldn't really recommend playing them in season long, but if you look at Ben's home road splits, they're pretty drastic. Everyone kind of knows that. And on top of it, at 1 p.m. starts, he's struggled immensely. Going to Jacksonville is a tough place to play. I just think that it'd pretty much be Connor for me. And then I like the Jag side a little. James O'Shaughnessy as a punt tight end.
Yes. I thought I was gonna surprise you.
I think
I love it.
I think he's a good play just with the volume that he's gotten. He's in New England for a little bit. He was pretty good tight end. He's pretty shifty for a Bear guy. And he's definitely seen a target increase. I think he's seen 6 targets last week or 5 with 5 catches or 2 weeks ago before their bye. So I like James O'Shaughnessy. I don't want to say I like Bortles. If you game stack, I think this is a game stack. I think a lot of the sharper DFS minds are probably on this as a game stack if they're going to game stack any game in this on this slate as or consider it sneaky in that sense.
Yeah, I think Bortles is a fine point per dollar play, to be honest with you. And I'm so glad you mentioned James. Was it O'Shaughnessy? Am I pronouncing that right?
Yeah, James
O'Shaughnessy.
I think he's game viable.
I have him locked in, and I have and this sounds absurd, but I have him locked in right now 100% because he just gives you so much savings. 6 targets last week, like you mentioned. He got injured and missed a couple games, but prior to the injury, he had gone two consecutive games with 6 and 4 targets in week 5 and 6. It was good to see him come back, last week, week 10. And get 6 targets again. And then in addition to that, Steelers are very generous to his tight end position. Obviously, if we get a touchdown from him, it's going to be a bonus. But the Steelers have been generous to tight ends this season. They've allowed the 4th most DraftKings points per game to the position, tied for second most receptions. And I'm looking here, it's 1, 2, 3, 4, tied for 5th most receiving yards to the position with 4 touchdowns, which is up there as well. Listen, it's a good spot for him. Very cheap. I think he has a solid floor. And if he does find the end zone here, you're smashing his salary. That's what you want. And when you're looking, and when it's a week like this one where you want to pay up for so many guys, we haven't even gotten to the best game of the slate, and we've already mentioned a couple of high-priced guys in good spots. You want to find savings every way possible. And if you're not paying up for Zach Ertz, I think going all the way down here, it's a good idea. So I like him quite a bit here. And I'm with you, man. I think Blake Bortles is a good point per dollar play. It's tough for me to go there when I have so much love for Dak Prescott at $100 more. And that's kind of where why I'm not rostering Bortles. But I wouldn't be surprised to see Bortles slinging here. Any love for Fournette? Because I think Fournette is a strong tournament play this week as well.
Yeah, I like both running backs, Fournette and Connor. I should have hit on Fournette.
Yeah, I know you mentioned it on Thursday. That's why I asked, because I think it's a good spot. You mentioned last season in the playoffs he ran over this defense, no? If I'm not mistaken.
2 games last year, he had pretty decent games, or some not in the playoffs. He was headed to a pretty good game, and he got hurt. But the first game, he had like an 85-yard run, which kind of padded his stats for a TD. But in the playoffs, he was also headed to a good game, and he got injured. So, I like Connor, especially at home.
Yeah. And it was refreshing to see Fournette, get 24 carries in his first game back from injury last week here. So gotta like him without a doubt here at 6,900. And I think he's going to be pretty much unowned here. Any final thoughts on this game? I agree with it. I think Jacksonville is an interesting tournament defense, kind of one I've been probably fitting in because they're only 2,200 here. And like you mentioned, Big Ben does struggle on the road. So I wouldn't mind using them. I've actually found, a way to fit in the Texans, who I like a lot this week. But if you cannot fit in the Texans, going down to Jacksonville makes a ton of sense as well. Anything else here in this game before we move on to the next?
No, that's it.
All right. So we got the Broncos headed to Los Angeles to take on the Chargers here. Broncos have a 19.5 implied team total. Chargers have a 27 implied team total. This game has a 46.5 over under. It has not moved since it opened. Chargers are 7.5 point favorites here. To me, it's just this game is going to start with Melvin Gordon and end with Melvin Gordon. He's just in a fine spot. Broncos have struggled against the run. I think he's a fine play. I'm not prioritizing him because I much rather play Saquon Barkley than I, would like Gordon. But I wouldn't be surprised to see Gordon be amongst the top 5. Even I wouldn't be surprised if he would finish the most fantasy points at the position this week. It really wouldn't be surprising to me. This is just not a game environment that I'm as excited about as I am for someone like Barkley's or Kamara's this week, or even Elliott. Those 3 guys for me are I'm prioritizing them before I prioritize Melvin Gordon. Still, Gordon's a fine play here. I like Keenan Allen, but I just think this is a tough matchup, and I just don't like this game environment either for him. So I'm not really that bullish on the Chargers passing offense as I've been in weeks past. And then from the Denver side, Phillip Lindsay is someone that I'm always going to have interest in. And then you and I kind of spoke about this, but roster construction is not allowing me to fit him in. I think he's finely priced. I think he's matchup proof. I think he has a safe floor. The usage is there. But again, considering how I'm building my lineups and considering some of the 50 or like 5 to 6K range receivers that we've talked about already, I just rather play one of them in the flex spot over Lindsey. And that's kind of where I stand, So it's not that he's a bad play by any means, but it's more of a roster construction thing. For instance, we both expressed our love for Sterling Shepard at 5,300, and when you look at Lindsey, he's 5,200. I think we both would do everything we possibly can to get that extra 100 to fit in someone like Shepard in the flex spot over Lindsey. I mean, that's just, I think, the way to do it this week. But you can correct me if I'm wrong there. Aside from that, man, this is a game I don't have much, if anything, from.
Yeah, I like Lindsey. I think Keenan Allen's definitely viable. He's pretty cheap at 6,700. Was complaining about not getting the ball, so that can kind of work out for him. I know, I just think that he'd be the only other pass catcher I'd be interested in. I think people are going to be interested in Sanders, but no, I'm just not. I don't know. I can't go to Sanders.
I think he's fine because the volume is going to be there, man. But the matchup is tough. It's one of those things where there's no need to go. I don't think this is a weekend where he breaks a slate. That's just the way I look at it. Can he do it? Yeah. Has he done it before? Yeah. Do I think he's going to do it? No. I've been wrong before, guys. So keep that in mind. But it's just when you have you can't play everyone, and that's the problem. You got to pick and choose your battles here. I much rather play Hilton than Sanders. And I would assume you agree because I know you like Hilton a ton. So you got to kind of pick and choose your battles there. I much rather play Alshon Jeffrey than Sanders, and we'll get to that game later. In the same price range. So kind of where I'm at. I think Chargers defense are in a smash spot here against your boy Keenum, but I'm not going to pay out for defense this week at all, so I don't see myself rostering them. But I do think they're a fine play. Anything else on this game And before we move on to the next, we have a couple questions we got to get to. But feel free to, throw in anything else you have on this game, unless you're ready to move on.
No, that's pretty much it. I'm not too high on this game.
All right. Is Giants defense a good play versus the Bucks? I'm not going to do that. I respect, I know Fitzpatrick is turnover prone. I know he can easily, do two or three interceptions in any single game. But I think there's going to be a shootout here.
Yeah.
So I'm not
going up. I don't know if you want to go there. I get the thought process with Fitzpatrick. So I think there's better. I'm kind of interested in the low price defenses. I know Armando's not really with.
No, I like the Jags call. I actually like the Jags. I said Jags on Thursday because I think they're not as shut down as they used to be, but I don't think they're a pushover defense either. I think Jags might be the best point per dollar play at defense this week. I think it's right there. Problem is I'm finding the extra 500 in my my salary to get up to the Texans, who I think is such a strong defensive play this week as well. And you were the one that pointed them out to me, so I kind of did a little more digging, and I like the Texans quite a bit here. Thanks for your expertise, Bobby. That's thanking you for your expertise there. Half point PPR, Ingram or Smith-Schuster. That's a tough one. I'm gonna go with Ingram because of the game environment. Because if they get to the red zone, he might get the ball and might get in the end zone. So I'm going to go there. It is a tough Philly run defense. They do funnel to the pass, but Ingram did display his pass catching abilities last week, and I wouldn't be surprised if in the red zone he is involved. So I think they're going to score a ton of points there, and I think he can just fall into the end zone. So I'm going to go with Ingram, especially that it's half a point PPR, not a full point PPR.
Oh, yeah, I'm going to go with Ingram as well. I just think with that total being what it is, I understand the thought process with Juju. You're going to have Jalen Ramsey on Antonio Brown, which I guess is a reason to look to Juju. AJ Boye is still there on the Jacksonville side. I just think with Ingram in the spot that he's in, being how the total is, I think they're going to be playing with the lead. I think it'll be beneficial to him. And, yeah, like you said, it's half-point PPR. If it was full point, I'd probably look at Juju.
Yep. Abel is asking, in team caption mode for Dallas versus Atlanta, should we take any of the kickers? You can. I would probably try to steer away from that, though, because I do think there's plenty of options on both ends there that you can go to and that have a pretty good upside and ceiling. That said, though, if you're trying to fit in all the goodness, like if you're trying to get Julio Jones and Zeke in the same lineup, I wouldn't be trying to do that. Definitely the kickers would be very helpful. Neither of those defenses are in play for me. And if I'm taking a kicker, it'll be the Falcons one, as they have the higher implied team total.
Yeah, in cash games, I'm going with the highest usage guy. I haven't really looked at the structure captain mode, but yeah, I'd use kickers in cash with probably the highest usage guy in the captain position in tournaments. Like Armando said, all the just trying to, I don't know, maybe in terms of, yeah, I guess you could use a kicker in the captain mode to kind of differentiate yourself.
Yeah. I agree with that. Got a couple more questions here in the queue. Tevin Coleman, Dion Lewis, or Corey Davis, DFS trending play flex. I like Dion Lewis. He's going to be popular. If you don't want to take that ownership, Corey Davis is fine, but I like Dion Lewis at his price.
Oh, yeah, I like Dion Lewis as well.
Luck or Fitzpatrick? Oh, man, that's a
I think those are my quarterbacks in terms of –
I'm going to go with Luck.
I'm going to go –
I like them both a ton. I think they're very close, I like them both.
I think that those are the two guys in tournaments. And Mariota, throw Mariota in there. What's your top? If you had to give, I think it'd be for me Fitzpatrick, Luck, and then Mariota. Maybe Rosen would be in the top four I have for tournaments. What about you?
Luck Luck. I have Dak in my tournaments. I don't think he's going to be popular. I really, really like Dak a ton. I'm still going to play Breeze or Wentz in tournaments as well. They're going to be chalk, but I think, I really think like this is, and we'll get to this. Like we could break. You know what? Let's break this down right now. Before we go, how do you feel about Foles and Aguilar stacked DFS tournaments? I don't, is Foles expected to play? I don't think he's going to play. Am I missing something? I'm stumped now because I don't see how Foles is going to play. I'm assuming they meant Wentz and I'm assuming they meant Wentz. So I like Wentz a ton. If you meant Wentz, I like Wentz a ton this week. Oh yeah, there you go. Meant Wentz. I should have kept scrolling. Wentz, I like a ton this week. Aguilar, not so much. I think Golden Tate is going to see much more usage this week, and that's going to affect Aguilar, in my opinion. I just think that's the way it's going to roll. And Tate has a phenomenal matchup against P.J. Williams. We'll break that game down for you at the end. That's going to be a game we'll get pretty much in depth in. But I do love Wentz this week. Any thoughts there?
Yeah, I like Wentz. In terms of like Aguilar or Tate, I'm still going to lead Aguilar.
Well, they just asked it.
I like Aguilar. I like him a little better than Tate in tournaments. So I think people are going to gravitate towards Tate when we already know what Aguilar's done in this offense. He's already been someone who's Wentz has relied on. So I like Aguilar, and Aguilar's at a good price. Well, I don't know. This is for just standard season long. I mean,
no, it said stack, so I'm assuming it's a DFS question. And we'll break that game down like in depth because that's a game that we're really gonna get in depth about because there's so much to like there. So stick around and at the end of the show we'll definitely get there. Before we move on to the next thing, I just kind of briefly want to talk about this because you were asking me about the quarterbacks. Tell me your thought process here, okay? Because everyone's going to start pivoting. Everyone's going to be adjusting their lineups now to fit in Lamar Jackson, I think, which is going to take off ownership from Drew Brees, Carson Wentz, and some of the other really good quarterbacks in good positions. I'm not saying it's going to make them completely unowned, but I do think it's going to maybe go from 25 to 20 or 18. I think it's a significant percentage jump because of Lamar Jackson now being active. Does that give merit to sticking to these guys that we really liked so much heading into the week, or into the weekend, and just standing pat and just avoiding Jackson because there's so much more chances that he can fail than there is a lot of chance that he can fail here in this spot, and take the reduction of the ownership in guys like Wentz, Breeze, and just stick to what you were doing before instead of adjusting this morning because he's going to start now. And I don't know, man. I kind of am taking that mindset now where why am I going to get off of Breeze, who has such a high ceiling, all right? And in my opinion, probably the safest floor, and that over-under continues to jump up. Why am I going to pull him out of my lineup for Jackson and then to maybe upgrade the receiver? But we've already talked about about a handful of receivers in that 5 to 6K range that you can still fit in with plenty of ceilings and floors. So I don't know, man. I think Jackson is fine in cash because in cash you're just trying to get the best point per dollar, I guess. But in tournaments, I'm looking for ceiling, and Drew Brees is, in my opinion, Brees and Wentz are the two highest ceilings on the board this weekend, in my opinion. So I don't know. Just I want to kind of get your insight on that and what you thought of taking that mindset, into tournaments.
Yeah, I don't hate that mindset at all. I think in cash you definitely have to pivot to Lamar Jackson, but in tournaments, I think a lot of people gravitate towards Lamar Jackson anyways, just because of the name and that whole thing that people do when they see a flashy name. The public outside of the sharper DFS players, but I think that you can fade him in tournaments, and I think with the total being as high as it is in the Eagles Saints game, both of those quarterbacks are definitely going to lose some ownership because of people flocking to Jackson, and Jackson's in a situation where it's a second divisional game, and like said at the top of the show, traditionally the second divisional game is usually a pretty tough bout between both teams, and it's usually not as high scoring. So I don't hate just staying pat with Wentz or Drew Brees if you like those guys in tournaments, definitely.
Yeah. And I just, sometimes we think of these things and we don't say them on the show. And I just want the viewers to kind of know our thought process throughout everything. So sorry that we went off the rail a little bit, guys, here. I just, it's something I was thinking and I've been thinking throughout the show because I tend to have my lineups here. And if I make changes with news and things like that, and I just find myself sticking to Drew Brees in my tournament, my main tournament lineups here. So just food for thought there, guys. On to this next game. Bobby and I already mentioned we have some interest in the Arizona Cardinals, and they're hosting the Raiders this week. This over-under is very small, very, very, very small here, 41. Arizona has a 23 implied team total. Raiders have an 18 implied team total here. 53% of the bets are on the under. My concern here is that Arizona really didn't score a ton of points. And so, yeah, there's a lot of good value here, but they just typically don't score a ton of points. I think David Johnson's in a smash spot. We finally saw him last week, heavily involved in the passing game with 9 targets, caught 7 of those, scored a receiving touchdown as well. I believe he also got over 20 carries last week. Yes, 21 carries last week, 98 yards. It just looks so much better with Byron Leftwich calling the plays. I do expect that kind of usage moving forward for Johnson. He still remains a reasonable price at $7,500. I think he's going to be popular, rightfully so, and I like him this week. I'm just pivoting from him to Connor in tournaments. I just feel like that's, the usage is it's the same for both of them. And yeah, the matchup is better for David Johnson, but I'm going to go ahead and take that chance and go there this week. But I think Johnson is a very, very strong play. We talked about Josh Rosen here at 4,800. I think he's interesting in tournaments if you're trying to, be different here. We saw some upside, in week 8 where he scored over 20 DraftKings points through 2 touchdowns there against the 49ers. The problem is he just hasn't topped 252 yards all season. So, again, we haven't seen a true ceiling there from him. Fitzgerald, like we talked about earlier, 10 targets, at least 10 targets in each of the last 2 games. Volume has been there. We saw, a big game out of him in week 8 against the Niners. This is another good matchup where I wouldn't be surprised to see him have a big game. But again, that over under is really what concerns me here in this game. And I think a tight end that's going to be somewhat popular is Ricky Seals-Jones. Last week he saw 9 targets. You see, the way I look at it, though, is they were chasing points here pretty much all game, which is why I think we see some of these high targets for, Ricky Seals-Jones, maybe David Johnson. I still think Johnson will be more involved in the passing game than he was earlier in the season. But, again, for me, if I'm prioritizing anyone on this offense, it'll be Johnson. The rest of the guys are secondary plays for me. Any thoughts on that? And then give me your thoughts on Oakland. I don't have much. I know there's a couple of cheap guys that you can go to, but I'm not taking that approach this week.
So I like the Arizona side. Washington defense really doesn't get pressure against the quarterback. So I think a guy like Rosen as a tournament pivot off Lamar Jackson is a pretty sharp call. And stacking him with David Johnson or Christian Kirk, Larry Fitzgerald, I think it will be a little different in terms of what the field's going to do. So I like the idea of an Arizona stack. I think David Johnson's pretty much a lock playing cash. On the Oakland side, Jalen Richard, I like in terms of a low value guy who's going to definitely go overlooked against a run defense that has been absolutely putrid in terms of stopping running backs this season. I know he's more of a pass-catching running back, but I still like the value that you get with him, especially with the game script. I think that Arizona could actually kind of smash in the spot in terms of their total. I think they could put up around – I think they can get over 25 points, get to 30 points. So I don't have any issue with this stack. Cardinals defense is going to be pretty popular as well.
Yeah, I think they're a good play. Look, we talked about Jalen Richard on Thursday, and he's someone that I'm okay with because of his usage in the passing game. But he hasn't really done much with that. He just offers you 10 to 13 fantasy points. If you're okay with that, then that's fine. You could roster him. I much rather take a shot on someone like Theo Riddick, who's a little bit cheaper. And granted, his production is very similar to that of Richard here, but I just think it's a better game environment than this one for him. Both are okay, kind of floor plays, but I don't see a ton of upside from either of the two here. Seth Roberts, man, someone I've seen that name going around and stuff like that. I'm not going to go there. I could see why people go there. He's mid-price, but is it really necessary? And then how much of a real true ceiling do you see out of him, in this week?
So for me, I think Seth Roberts, at the beginning of the week, people were picking between him and Tyus Jones on Detroit, and I think Seth Roberts is a much better value play. I like Seth Roberts better than Brandon LaFell, with Patrick Peterson more than likely covering LaFell. I think Seth Roberts in the slot makes for a good play. I just don't think I'm going to go there much. I kind of got off that play, but earlier in the week, I liked it. I thought it was viable for cash. I still think it's viable for cash if you have to go there.
Okay. All right. Anything else on this game? I think everyone has been waiting for this next game on deck. So if you're done here, I'm ready to go on to the next.
Let's set that one up.
All right, guys, the final game of the slate, Philly and New Orleans. And as always, the best for last. This game has a 57 over-under. It has jumped up 3 points since it opened. 82% of the bets are on the over here. The Saints have a healthy 32.25 implied team total. The Eagles have a 24.75 implied team total here. Go ahead, take the floor, man, because this is one of the best games, or actually the best game on the main slate.
So I really like Zach Ertz for his price tag here. We have a lot of low value at tight end, but I don't think a lot of that value is going to be able to match Ertz at 6,600. You got to figure if Ertz was a wide receiver, his price tag would be almost around 8K, maybe 7,500 to 8K. So Ertz is someone I'm definitely trying to get in the majority of my tournament lineups. Kamara is cash game viable, but I think Kamara is more of a tournament play with how Saquon is such a lock. My guy in the Saints offense, who I would be very interested in getting into my cash games, is Michael Thomas. Philadelphia has been very shaky versus number one receivers. He's a guy that I like in both cash and tournaments. I feel like I'm kind of chasing because I haven't really been with him all year, and he's kind of going off, but I'm going to get on the bandwagon this week and hopefully it'll work out. Everyone in this game is pretty much in play, just with the total being what it is on the slate. Traquan Smith at 4K, Dallas Goedert, one of my buddies mentioned to me as a tight end play. Golden Tate, we hear he's going to get excess usage. That would be my only thing with how many guys in this Philadelphia. Now that you add Golden Tate in the mix, is he going to knock off Ertz? But yeah, I still like Ertz. I'm still going to roll Ertz. Michael Thomas, Kamara, Ertz, I think should be, in terms of tournaments, just they're viable for all formats. But in terms of tournaments, I'd be making sure you have guys, those guys in there. And this is the late game, so if you're winning money after the early slate, just be ready to see that kind of dwindle because a lot of people are going to have guys from this game. I should have hit on Wentz and Drew Brees. Like you said, we kind of hit on them earlier. I think with people moving to Lamar Jackson, they might see less ownership than what they were going to see previously. So I think that's interesting.
Yeah, I mean, I totally agree with you here. I think you just play pretty much you can play anyone, in this game. Obviously, the obvious guys, at least the ones that are involved, that don't go for the third running back or anything like that. But to start with the quarterback position, I think Drew Brees and Wentz are the top two quarterbacks on the slate. I just think they have the biggest upside, the higher ceilings, and I also think they're the safest floors. Here, obviously, they are, two of the most expensive guys on the board. I'm okay with playing either of the two right now. I'm 50-50 to be completely honest with you. I was a little bit more on Wentz at the beginning of the week, but it's come down to a true 50-50. These are going to be two guys I have on my rosters, and And the only other guy I'll be rostering is Dak Prescott. So those are the three quarterbacks I'm pretty much playing in tournaments this week. I think Michael Thomas, like you mentioned, is just lock him in. I don't think it's chasing points. It's just you're getting a really good run defense that funnels to the pass. So Thomas is going to get his here, I think. And we've just seen him play so much better at home because Breeze just plays so much better at home. And I think, like, I don't know if this is something, but it just looks like Breeze is throwing the ball more in New Orleans than he does on the road. So maybe it's been matchup, based reasons or whatnot, but it's something that I kind of picked up. I think he's attempting about 4 or 5 more passes at home, which might not seem as significant, but to me it is because that can be, 2 or 3 more targets for Michael Thomas. So I like Michael Thomas a bunch. I mentioned earlier in the show, like I'm two guys I'm locking in and then building around are Barkley and Thomas, and I'm doing that. I'm going to go ahead and do that. I like Alshon Jeffrey a ton at 6,300. I think he's a pretty strong play here. The volume has been pretty consistent for him all season long. I'm just concerned because we haven't really seen a true upside and significant ceiling for him since joining Philadelphia. So it is a little bit concerning for me. However, I do think this is a very good game environment for him, and the matchup is also the one-on-one matchup is also a good one here. I believe he's expected to see Eli Apple. Alshon Jeffrey, Nelson Aguilar is actually expected to see Marshawn Lattimore. I don't know how that's going to work out, which is another reason why I'm a little bit hesitant to play him. He is the cheapest receiver here, and he has a significant role. That's without a doubt. And this is a good game environment, but I don't know. It's kind of tough for me there. I really like Golden Tate. I don't know how popular he's going to be. I think a lot of people are still going to be concerned about his usage in that first game with the team. And, this is another week that he gets to learn the playbook, the scheme, practice the timing with the quarterback. And at 5,500, I think that's underpriced for someone as talented as he is. And then when you look at his one-on-one matchup against P.J. Williams, is amongst the best of the week for any receiver here, as Williams does grade out as one of the worst corners in the league, according to Pro Football Focus. So I like him quite a bit. I'm going to make sure to sprinkle him in some tournament lineups because I just think this is a game where if he's going to pop off, it will be this one. I do not like the running back situation for Philadelphia at all. It's a cluster there, and you just don't know who you're going to get. Plus, the Saints have been good against the run. Alvin Kamara is a very strong play as well. Although the Eagles are tough against the run, they have been susceptible against pass-catching backs. Where the Eagles do their best is the red zone. But when you have a well-oiled machine like New Orleans, I don't think they're going to be able to slow them down in the red zone. So I do expect them to score points here quite a bit. Ingram, to me, is interesting, but he is not someone that I like this week as much as I like last week. Last week I told you, or we talked about on the show how much I liked Ingram. He had a big game against the Bengals. I think this is a week where we look at Alvin Kamara for the bigger game here. So I know Ingram is cheap, but I'm not going to go and chase those points in DFS at least. If I have him in a season long, because I know we have that question, I don't want to confuse anyone. I would definitely be playing him in season long because of the game environment, but not in DFS. I just much rather play Dion Lewis a couple hundred more. And then any other thoughts here? I know you have mentioned as a cheap play earlier in the week, Saints defense. I'm not sure if you're still considering them this week.
I think at 2,100, I think they're still viable. In terms,
okay.
I think this game's going to.
Yeah.
I know what I just said, but I think this game has in tournaments, like there's a possibility that it could go under. So, and there could be a defensive touchdown. I think that you can take that at 2,100. I wouldn't be excited to roster them in season long, but at that price tag, I think that in tournaments in DFS, like it's not the worst. Like if you have to go there, like I wouldn't be against it.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, again, I see the logic behind it, man. I unfortunately cannot get behind it. I did get behind the Jacksonville call. I cannot get behind this one. We have a question here. What type of production do you see wide receiver Josh Reynolds having it versus KC on Monday night? will he be a big factor in the game plan? Not sure what to expect. All right, so it's tough to predict because he's not going to step in and beat Cooper Kupp, where he's going to get 9 targets or 8 targets or anything of that nature. I think considering the game environment and considering, the matchup, I think you can peg him for anywhere between 4 and 6 targets. I know the last game he played, I think it was against Green Bay. He had 5 targets in that one. So I wouldn't be surprised to see in that range, be between 4 and 6. I think anything more than that would just, be a bonus. I would not be projecting him for that. I in season-long leagues and PPR formats, I'm okay with him as a, flex option. It's one of those things where you want to have exposure to this game, but you can't be unrealistic and expect, huge things from him. And you cannot be expecting Cooper Kupp, like numbers here. Any thoughts on Reynolds and what you expect from him?
Reynolds, I don't think he's going to come in and take over like Cooper Kupp, take over what Cooper Kupp does. I think that he's fine, just because of the total in that game. I think anyone's pretty much in play in that game. It's similar to this New Orleans Eagles game.
Yeah, and I agree with that. We got a couple more questions here in the queue before we get going. So let's get to those. Corey Davis or Fitzgerald, half-point PPR. That's a good one, actually. That's a good question. I'm going to lean Corey Davis because I think there's more upside, and I just feel like that's going to be a better game environment. But that one's close.
Yeah, I think Corey Davis.
Yeah. Galladay or Dion Lewis, 1-point PPR season long. Give me Dion Lewis.
Yeah, Dion Lewis.
Hill or Cooks in FanDuel. Well, I'm not playing FanDuel this week, so that's going to be tough to answer. But in a vacuum, I'll take Hill over Cooks.
Hill or Cooks in FanDuel. I'd go Hill.
Yeah, I go Hill here. Just so much up. They're both so much upside guys. They're both hit or miss as well. Any final thoughts on this statement? It's an interesting one. And anything you want to say before you go or before we get going and do our last minute tinkering here?
No, good luck, guys. Gonna be a good week.
Yes, everyone. Thank you guys for tuning in. As always, you can catch us every Sunday at 11 a.m. You could catch us on Thursday nights at 7 p.m. Podcast usually comes out Friday mornings. Next week, we're going to do things a little different. I believe we're going to be recording on Wednesday because Thursday is Thanksgiving, guys. So if you do tune in Thursdays, just keep in mind we'll be recording Wednesday. We'll be on. We'll cover a little bit of Thursday and the Sunday slates on that show. The podcast would be for the same as well. So make sure you guys check us out next week. Don't forget, Football Diehards is giving away 2 weeks free subscription. For those of you who have not tried us out, make sure you do that because there is a ton of information. Bobby, you can find some of Bobby's articles there. We got guys like John Lobb. Miss Jen Ryan is also putting up some good content there. Bob Harris, so many great stuff. So many great writers and so much great content there. So with as well a ton of information, snap counts, red zone, targets, so many things that are useful for your, to get prepared for the week, guys. So make sure you go check that out. I am Armando Marsal. You can catch me at Armando_Marsal. Bobby, let them know where they can follow you on social media.
Yeah, Bobby Gomes DFS on Twitter.
All right, guys. Good luck to everyone this weekend, and we will see you next week.